Hi, I'm Pyrus from Pyrus Gaming, and today I wanted to talk about two games that go dirt cheap on almost all platforms consistently.
I want to feel your head right now. You are the place, my only
Both games were released in 2021, so only a year old. Both are available on current gen systems, so PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. And I wanted to talk about them for a minute because I played both. I platinumed both games. I enjoyed it that much. And I paid way more than the current value on each of these games. What games are they? Scarlet Nexus and Tales of Arise. Both games came out at the full price tag, so $69.99 on current gen consoles. Both games are very high production value. Both games are pretty long, taking somewhere between 60 to 80 hours to do a run through with a decent amount of the side content completed. It just occurred to me as I keep watching these sales pop up over and over and over again. Man, these two games are so cheap. I've seen them as low as $15 for a current gen copy of the game, physical copy of the game, not even digital. And I just keep thinking to myself, man, if people haven't tried this yet, they really need to. So these two games are actually pretty similar in their content. Both games are action RPGs. Both are made by Bandai Namco. This is not a paid video for Bandai Namco. I bought both games with my own money, and I just wanted to talk about them because I keep seeing them pop up on sale. They're similar in some ways and different in others. I would say that they both have a slightly different niche. So we'll go through a little bit today about why I would think you would pick up one over the other. To kick things off, let's talk a little bit about Tales of Arise. Now, again, I picked this up, I think, at full price or pretty close to it. Tales of Arise is a story about a sort of mysterious man. We don't know where he came from. We don't know what his original origin is at the beginning of the game. But his name is Alphen. He's the main character of the game. He's actually starts off with this metal mask over his face that covers the entire thing so you can't see any of it. But he has this strange affliction where he cannot feel pain. No matter what's happening to his body, he could still die, but he does not feel the actual pain of it. So Alphen is working at sort of a slave colony, and not being able to feel pain kind of helps him out with that. He makes him a very good worker. They break out of the camp. They go on a journey through different realms. There is a different master of each realm. It is a long, fantastical story. You end up playing with a total of 6 characters, 4 that end up in your main party, 2 that are in side party. And the game is just beautiful. It is full of color. It's full of effects. Both games are very anime, so if you don't like anime, then maybe neither one of these is for you. The characters are full of life. They're full of color. They're animated very well. The voice acting is good for the most part. It has a little bit of quirkiness here or there, I'm sure, from translation. If you don't like that, you can throw on the Japanese version. The story ends up being this sort of rise from the ashes kind of story, and trying to bring together 2 different factions and finding these orbs of power that basically are going to prevent the end of the world. It's got all of the classic RPG elements to it. And you're putting together this party, you're going through this struggle. It is big, it is bold, it is flashy, it is colorful, it is anime as hell. It has these massive, super kind of finisher moves where you combo up with your allies and bring down pain on your enemies. The bad guys are bigger than life. They come across as really comic book kind of villains. And the main boss fights are big and bodacious. That's not the right word. But they fill the screen. They have huge effects, monstrous battles. It's a game that's got pretty much everything you want from an RPG, and it does it at a very high production value level. Again, now for a super low price. The biggest drawbacks to this game are it is very hold you by the hand for an RPG, which I've mentioned in past videos. I'm not that much against, but I do like a little bit of on your own kind of vibe from time to time. But there's a good amount of hand holding in this game. You can feel kind of awkward. You have a jump, but you really can't go a lot of places, so you're going to run into invisible walls on the map. One of the early levels, the earliest level, is supposed to be sort of drab and full of dirt and dust and brown and ugly, but especially compared to the other levels, it comes across as sort of low quality. Another negative for Tales of Arise is if you don't like one of those games where the allies and your character are constantly yelling out the moves that they use, they unfortunately do that in this. Also, the gameplay and the fighting can get pretty hectic at times, and with the effects, it could be kind of difficult to see and understand exactly what's happening, especially if you're using one of the melee characters like Alphen or Law. You're right in the middle of it, and all these effects going on, it can be kind of difficult to understand. It's playable for sure. I definitely got used to how to do it, but it can be pretty hectic. And there is sort of this relationship building that goes on in the game. It's not technically difficult or anything. It doesn't require much of the player. But what it does do is the characters do have these histories between some of them, which I won't spoil here. But all in all, very enjoyable game, enjoyable story, bigger than life, bold, bright. I can't emphasize that enough. And I really loved it. I believe it was up for Game RPG of the Year last year. Maybe I should look. Tales of Arise did end up winning Best RPG of 2021. Ultimately, I really enjoyed my time with it. As I mentioned, I platinumed both of these games. I spent, I think, 80 plus hours with it. For those of you who like anime, like those big, bold, bright characters and finishing moves and special effects, a story that is out there. I mean, it gets kind of wild by the end of it. Can definitely hold your attention. It's something that I definitely got a lot of fun and enjoyment out of. You can currently find it for $29.99 on Amazon. You can find it for cheaper than that for used versions and for digital versions. Okay, moving on to the second game, Scarlet Nexus. And I've actually seen this game probably go even a little bit cheaper, $19 and change, $15 and change. It's another action RPG. It's very anime as well. And it's a little different in that it's a darker game. It definitely has some darker elements to it in terms of heavy overtones of murder and mystery. The biggest difference in terms of the way the story works is that there are two protagonists. You have Yuito Sumeragi and Kasane Randall. And the interesting part is that these two characters have separate story arcs. So you can play through as Yuito and then come back, play through as Kasane. And you actually experience the game in different ways. There are certain events that transpire, and Yuito will see one side of it and Kasane will see the other. And the innovative part of the game is that frequently these two characters don't understand each other's motives and why they do certain things, and that really pits them against each other. In order to experience the full game, you kind of do have to play through and experience both sides of the story. But I did love that aspect of it because you're playing in that and you're like, why aren't these two getting along? What's happening? And then what the other character does something that seems totally crazy based off of what you know and the character that you're playing as. And that's just an element you don't experience. I don't think I've ever experienced in any other game. The combat is a little bit more readable in this game. You're in a lot more control as you switch between the different character abilities. So you will have characters that are in your party that fight alongside you. But the big thing is it's got this whole brain program theme thing. And basically, when you are fighting, you can use the abilities of your allies in addition to yourself. Both of the two main characters use psychokinesis, so they can throw objects at enemies, which in itself is pretty cool. And the way that the combat system is created, it rewards you for weaving in and out between using your melee attacks and then throwing objects with psychokinesis. But in addition to that, your allies' abilities, you can draw them into yourself. You have allies, for example, that can duplicate you. So then when you use melee attacks, you're using multiple, like maybe 2 copies and yourself. So you're attacking for 3 times the damage. One that lets you see invisible enemies. It also makes it easier to hit critical weaknesses of enemies. There are 2 that are really good for movement. One has teleportation. The other one is super fast, so it kind of slows down with the action that's going on around you. And then you can combo these abilities at once. So one of my favorites was once you're finally working with the other main character, you can combine so you can throw more objects at once. But you can also bring in the duplication ability and the slowdown time to give you the ability to really gather a lot of elements and throw it all at once. and you just do an absolute ton of damage to your enemies. So that's great for killing bosses, stuff like that. But it makes it really smooth and intuitive, and it invites you to experiment with different things. The game itself looks great in terms of its style, in terms of its colors. The characters, again, are very cel-shaded anime style, which is great for me. I'm fine with that. I have no problem with that. A couple of the shortfalls of this game are similar to Arise in that the party interactions and stuff, it's kind of a sort of side questy, give them gifts and then you get the level ups, and then you can unlock more abilities and you see these little side skits and stuff like that. It's interesting that you can see the other side of some of these characters, especially out of the element of fighting. But it does seem sort of tacked on, and it's not the most interactive. It's not like you're making lots of choices that are making major impacts on the game or anything like that. The other thing that can be kind of a problem with this game is that the enemies can be repetitive. There are still some good bosses, probably not quite as good. It depends on your aesthetic. These bosses are more kind of dark and scary and gruesome, and the Tales of Arise bosses are sort of big and bombastic, fill the screen with projectiles and stuff. So they're both very different in that way, but the main enemies are also kind of weird and gruesome, but there just aren't that many of them. So as you play through the game, you're going to kill a lot of the same enemies over and over again, unfortunately. And I would say that's probably one of the biggest downfalls. It is not an open world game. These are all connected areas, so you have an overall map, and then you select the list to go to a different one area or another. The other thing that this game does, which may or may not be to your taste, is that the cinematics look really good, but sometimes it also goes to more of a comic book style where it's just one flat image with text under it and a voice actor, another flat image, text under it and a voice actor, and just kind of throws them up like little screens from a comic book as opposed to playing a full cinematic. It still works, it still looks good, but if you're not into that, that isn't the game. Overall, I would say the combat is fluid, it's fast, it invites experimentation, it invites you to switch between different abilities. There are certain enemies that you're definitely going to use these abilities against. They have weaknesses to different elements. You have two main elements you use, which is electricity or fire. So that helps. And then they have sort of this secondary bar where if you're hitting the weaknesses, which maybe is throwing objects at it to crack its shell, or it's using electricity or something like that, it builds up the second bar, and then you could do this kind of brain finisher thing, which looks pretty good. It's satisfying when it happens. And then that also builds up this extra bar, which can put you into this like super brain mode where you things attached to the back of your head and you go kind of mental and you're throwing huge objects at enemies. Like, it's out there, it's big time kind of out there wild RPG stuff. The story gets pretty crazy. Both games do that. It's a lot of fun. The experience, I think, is worth it, especially at these low dollar amounts. Like, you can do a lot worse with your money for $15 or $20 than these AAA equivalent quality games. If you're into RPGs, you're into action RPGs, you're into that anime character style, you love that over the top, big, bombastic, bright, whatever, you're just into big and bold action RPGs, both of these games are excellent. I mean, physical copies of the game, $30, $25, $20, $15. I've seen it as cheap as that. Used, I'm sure you could probably find it for $10. You can't go wrong with that. You know, I do a mix of buying physical and digital, but at the end of the day, it's kind of nice having that disc because you never know when this stuff's gonna go completely offline and you're in the dark, and well, I could still do something. Two great games, great action RPGs for the money. It can't be beat. I thought they were honestly worth it at full price when I played through, but at these prices and the fact that they are always on discount, it doesn't even matter when I put this video up, they're on discount right now. If you watch this 3 months from now, I'm sure they're back on discount again. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. When I keep seeing them pop up, it just triggered in my head, man, I hope people are buying this and playing these games because it's such a great value. And when you go out and you pre-order or you early buy the next big video game and it's $70, And then you could buy this game and play it for 15 or 20. I mean, there are certainly some big games I paid $70 for recently that I preferred these two games over. They're not old, they're current gen, next gen, current gen. What gen is it? I mean, I think it's current gen, right? Because these things have been out for a couple of years now. Let's say current gen. I might put next gen in the title just because clickbait, you know? I don't know. Some people still call it next gen. Whatever. These games are excellent. They're excellent quality. They are excellent experiences. I enjoyed my time with it. There isn't a whole lot of time wasting in either one. You could argue this a little bit. They're both fun. They're both great. I loved them both. And they're dirt cheap. So if you haven't tried them out and you like this style of game, get it. If you want one that's a little bit more wholesome, that's a little lighter, but it is big and bold and colorful, and you go to these mystical areas and stuff, and you like enemies that are sort of bigger than life and old school, bad guy, destroy the world, go with Tales of Arise. If you want something that's a little more mature, that is a little darker, and it's definitely more of sort of a gory, off the beaten path sort of game, and definitely one that didn't get quite as much acclaim, go with Scarlet Nexus. But I'm pretty sure they both have anime series. I don't know if they're any good, but it's sort of got side content to it. Another thing, both games have some pretty cool music. The intro music for each game, when you just have your cursor over it on PlayStation 5 or whatever, excellent. They both have these intro cutscenes, which are pretty darn cool. Again, very anime, so if you don't like anime, maybe it's not so cool for you. Really, really good games. I highly recommend both of them. Super, super cheap, on sale all the time. And you can pick them up physically if you are a physical collector. This is Pyrus from Pyrus Gaming, recommending Scarlet Nexus and Tales of Arise for dirt cheap action RPG games that really are great bang for the buck. Subscribe for more, like this video if it helped you out, if you're going to pick up the game. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions. I respond to every comment on every video. I thank you for watching. More content coming up soon, and I will see you there.
Place my own green home.